This is KC Sports Tonight.
Good afternoon and welcome to KC Sports Tonight. I'm Neil Jones, joined by a very special guest, Little Timmy. Let me see if I can get this on here on camera. Little Timmy, Timmy the intern helping us out, Scott Reese and Marlia Campbell over in Lawrence. Timmy, put that on. Are over in Lawrence doing a thing for the KU basketball thing, a show that's going to air on our sister station on Saturday, the KU Round Ball Classic. Jared Kohler out getting ready to cover the ring ceremony that the Chiefs are having for a second straight year. And so it's going to be Timmy and I. Timmy, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah. I appreciate it. His name is actually Gabe. Gabe went to school he could not get into Missouri or Kansas State. It was very embarrassing for his family. And he ended up at the Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State. We're going to talk a little football involving Arizona State and the former Pac-12 coming up a little later, so he is peculiarly perfect to talk about that. But we're going to begin the evening talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. The ring ceremonies tonight. Many people don't realize there are more NFL Super Bowl rings in Kansas City than anywhere else in the United States, because there is a company, a gentleman and a company here that will buy rings. It's like a pawn shop, a high-level pawn shop. And if you're a former play on a former Super Bowl championship team and have a Super Bowl ring and you need to make a little money, you can sell it to them and they won't sell it right away. They'll hold it, and that's why the players trust them. Look, if you need short-term money, you can turn it in. So that, for a long time, the only people that had Super Bowl rings in Kansas City were the guys from the Len Dawson team that won it in January of 1970. And then the company over in, I believe, in KCK, the pawn shop, that had hundreds and hundreds of rings. But now, Gabe, thanks to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and this generation of Chiefs players, there are a bunch of Super Bowl rings in Kansas City, and there's going to be more after tonight.
Definitely. And there's been, we were discussing it pre-show, just that with this last 5-year run of 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, that really I'm interested certainly in seeing what the ring's design is, because I've seen, at least in NBA circles, Golden State Warriors won a ring 2 years ago, and guys who had won 3-4 rings had different rings than guys who had just won one. So I'm interested to see if the Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones rings, guys who have won 3 of them, maybe Mecole Hardman, those types, if their 3 Super Bowls, if their ring looks different than somebody who, like Felix Uzama, who's just won one, just to say just won one. That's right. How lucky Kansas City's been. But I think that's really the intrigue tonight, because, I mean, you know that the rings are going to look incredible just because modern rings are sophisticated in so many different ways at this point. So
I asked Andy Reid, do you wear your rings? And he said, I do not. I wear my wedding ring. He says, that's sacred. He held up his left hand and showed his wedding ring and said that's sacred to me, but I'm not. I don't wear the other ones. My wife loves wearing them, and I think there are a lot of the support people. The Chiefs have been nice enough to give everybody that has almost anything to do with the team a ring. I'm not sure it's the exact same ring as what the players get, but it's beautiful. And you see people around at events and stuff. Some of the guys I know and ladies who have worked for the Chiefs. And so there are a bunch of those support people who have been around for all 3. So it will be interesting. I would think that the top of the ring might be the same for everybody, but then on the side, maybe it might how many you played on, how many teams you played on. But one thing's for sure, it's a very special evening. We're going to have a complete report tonight on KCTV5 News at 10 on both news and in the sports area of it. Now, I've been covering this team on the football field, if you can call it football, over the last couple of weeks with the OTAs, the organized workouts, and now this week, the mini camp. And the mini camps are a little more serious. And what's interesting to me is what they're talking about with the wide receivers. Obviously, Xavier Worthy, the super fast, super quick wide receiver who was their first-round draft pick, has been unable to play football. He's on the field, but he's got kind of a tweaked hamstring. They don't want to take a chance of damaging it. So he walks around and he looks fine. But other than him, everybody else has been out there. Rashee Rice has been up here, obviously. But I've been excited to see Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, everyone knew he was quick and everyone knew he was fast. I don't know that people expected him to come in and be told, hey, this guy's a tremendous route runner. But that's exactly what Patrick Mahomes has been talking about. If he truly is grasping the offense as well as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid say he is, I think he's a guy that might be able to help them more sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that the expectations in Kansas City are pretty high for Hollywood Brown. I know that the quotes that Patrick Mahomes gave today, you can see them on your screen here, just how glowing he was about him is super encouraging to hear. The limited clips that we've seen and the availability that reporters have been able to see out at Arrowhead, he's looked good. I do, if you're going to be any bit of pessimistic and wait and see mode, especially with Xavier Worthy and his hamstring injury, that's not awesome at this point of the year, just to know that he's not getting real reps of anything until you get to St. Joe. But and with Hollywood Brown, I know that Mahomes is being super complimentary about him, but Mahomes has been super complimentary about a lot of Chiefs receivers over the last couple of years, and sometimes that's just tongue in cheek and trying to hype guys up. We saw that last year when there were struggles, but I think that Hollywood Brown has as good of a chance to come in and maybe fill that completely different skill sets in terms of being more of a deep threat than a possession receiver like Juju Smith-Schuster was. But I think in terms of a one-year deal, a prove-it type of deal, he's the kind of credentialed guy of you know what you're kind of getting, and you've seen him do it in Baltimore, you've seen him do it in Arizona. I think that the expectation should be really high, and I think that he's one of the guys who can certainly take a load off of Travis Kelce and not make you expect close to 1,000 yards again from Travis Kelce if they're trying to wait him off and get him to the postseason healthy and ready to rock for another January run next year.
A couple of things that were very interesting that Patrick Mahomes talked about, and I agree with you that he is usually very complimentary this time of year of his wide receivers because he works with guys down there away from the practice facility down in Dallas, and so I think he is trying to encourage them. He said some things, though, a level of effusiveness that I have not heard from him on some of these other guys. I think he's talking about, oh, yeah, you know, he's out there and he's working hard and he's picking it up. What he's saying now is that Hollywood Brown is grasping the offense much quicker than he thought he would. He also said, I had no idea that he's this good of a route runner. I knew he was quick, but when we're down there in Dallas, he's running precise routes immediately. And I think part of that goes back to where he played in college at the University of Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley. Whatever you think about Lincoln Riley as a head coach, there is no questioning his ability as an offensive coordinator, and he ran a very tight ship. And look at the wide receivers and tight ends and running backs that have populated NFL rosters and played at a very high level. CeeDee Lamb down with the Dallas Cowboys, their leading receiver. Hollywood Brown had some success in Baltimore. He was put into a tough situation in Arizona. The Cardinals have been a complete mess for a while. I don't know that I would judge anybody, any of the players there, particularly on offense, based on what they went through. But then other guys who've come into the league, I promise you they are disciplined and they run correct routes. They don't freelance a lot in that offense. And so I think Hollywood Brown, that part doesn't surprise me as much. But Gabe, I was concerned that he was not 100% physically, and I've had at least one scout tell me that he flat out is 100%. He is back to where he was in college. He had some foot surgery after college and before his draft. In fact, that's probably why he was available when the Ravens took him where they did. Had he been completely healthy, I think I think people saw him as a slightly he's a smaller version, but just as quick and fast as Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had blazed that trail. People were seeing what the Chiefs were doing with him, and I think Hollywood Brown was going to follow him into a really high draft pick, but instead he hurt his foot in the Big 12 championship game and had to have surgery, and so he went into the NFL draft as sort of wounded. I think he's got a chance to be really good. Patrick Mahomes today said this is a guy that's going to help everybody because his speed on the outside as well as Xavier Worthy's is going to create space for Travis Kelce and for every other receiver on the field. And that part I do agree with. And look, Andy Reid has proven that if you give him weapons, he'll figure out ways to make them work. And so I am excited about what this offense holds. And again, we don't know what kind of a number of games that Rashee Rice is going to be suspended by the NFL. I think we're all assuming that it will be a minimum of 4, but we don't know that. But the fact is, when he comes back, I think it will be, if everybody's healthy, a really, really good room.
I think that there's good reason to believe that this could be the most well-rounded Chiefs offense since the 2018 season, when you had that Kareem Hunt element of the running game was effective, and they had the deep passing, they had all the underneath stuff with Kelsey, the deep passing with Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins. I think that with all of the great news that we've heard and seen of Marquise Brown, and you would hope that Xavier Worthy provides that deep threat as well, and then you add in the underneath stuff of Travis Kelsey. Jared Wiley's getting some decent praise as well of looking the part as a young tight end, and Noah Gray in year 4 or 5 of the offense, you would think that he's got things. And then Isaiah Pacheco. I think the biggest question that remains with the Chiefs offense at this point is just who's the running back 2, who's the running back 3. I know that you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire there, but he's not a guy who's really shown that he's going to get a ton of touches, and they'd be missing the Jerick McKinnon element that they had the last couple of years as far as it is at this point. So I think that's the biggest question mark. But I think that so far the offseason, and especially if you just believe the hype that Patrick Mahomes is feeding you of we're going to throw the ball deep again, that should give you excitement that the Chiefs offense isn't just going to stall out and be neutral like they were a lot of last year.
Mahomes today in the press conference said that Andy Reid has kind of gotten on him a little bit, because he's like, why are you checking down? You want to check down? And he's like, no. And he goes, well, why'd you check down? And he goes, okay. He's pushing Patrick Mahomes to go deep more often. And then when the reporters ask, it was an interesting day, because usually Reid talks first and then the player talks. In this case, because Patrick was ready to go, he spoke ahead of Reid. So when Reid came in, hey, we're all going, hey, Mahomes says you're really pushing him. He goes, look, I say that every year. It wouldn't matter who the wide receivers are. This is the time of year you want your quarterbacks, all of your quarterbacks, to stretch it and see what's possible. Because, yeah, you're going to throw picks. So what? It's practice. Make your mistakes now in the off season so that you kind of understand, okay, what's the threat here? If I throw against that defensive coverage on this play, it won't work if I throw deep, or if I underthrow it, or whatever. You try it now rather than later. One position you can't evaluate. People ask me, how do the offensive tackles look? Who knows? They're not playing football. They don't have pads. They got helmets, but they're not wearing shoulder pads. They're not having contact. You cannot tell how they're doing, but clearly there's a battle at left tackle. Who's it going to be? The kid from BYU, the second-round draft pick, or Wanye Morris, the kid who was a third-round pick last year, who played a little bit last year, was good at times, not great, good. We expect him to take a big step forward. It'll be interesting to see who wins that battle. I think I've mentioned this 4 or 5 times, but a couple of scouts told me on paper these are the weakest offensive tackles that the Chiefs have in the Andy Reid era. And one guy said, look, that's really sounds terrible. What it means is you don't have a proven left tackle. That's all it means. In the past, you had people that you believed and had proven they could play left tackle in the NFL. Think about it. The whole time Andy Reid's been here, the first year he had the number 1 overall pick in the draft as his left tackle. Now, he hadn't played in the NFL, but you had a pretty good idea that he was going to be good, and he ended up being pretty good. But the bottom line is they don't have a proven left tackle. And, Gabe, that may end up being no big deal at all, or it may end up being a huge deal if nobody can fill that role. That's when you go out on in the market and look to see who gets cut, and you try to pick up a guy who may not be good, but he might be a 1-year patch to get you through to next season. It'll be interesting to see how that position works out.
Yeah, I mean, Donovan Smith is still unemployed at the moment. So
please don't. Please.
I mean,
please.
He's just out there waiting.
And I shouldn't act that way, because he'll be getting a Super Bowl ring tonight. But the bottom line is their tackle play at times last year was so awful, it was unbelievable. Mainly because of penalties, but they also were unable to win at the point of attack, and it created some problems. Okay, defensively, Patrick Mahomes brought it up. He said, boy, this defense is playing with a lot of confidence. Again, they're not hitting, so you really can't see defense do what they do, except you can watch the safeties and the corners. Are they breaking on the ball? Are they able to get a jam? Although you really can't jam people at the line of scrimmage because you don't have pads on. But my question is, do you really think they're going to be better without L'Jarius Sneed. Do you really think that? I mean,
I don't
Sneed
think that's
was
fair.
as good a cover guy as there was in the NFL, and we understand why they gave him up. It was, if you're going to pay your big defensive tackle and pay him like he's the best defensive lineman in football, and I'll tell you what, Chris Jones deserved that respect and deserves the money. But if you're going to pay that, you can't pay L'Jarius Sneed. So my question to you, are they going to take a step back from what they were last year?
I think that the logical choice would be to say yes. They were one of the two best defenses in the league last year. You lose one of the best cornerbacks in football. Like, you should absolutely take a step back if that's your situation. The counterpoint to that would be maybe the defensive line is one of the best in the league. George Karlaftis had double-digit sacks last year. You would think that the redshirt year of Felix Anudike-Uzomah would get better in year two. And I know Charles Omenihu, coming off the torn ACL, he'll have to come back later in the season again. But for the most part, it's the same group. And I know Chris Jones has said he's aiming for 20 sacks. I don't know how realistic that is, but if that's the goal, he's going to have to be the anchor because they don't have Sneed. It's going to have to be Jones. It's going to have to be Justin Reed on the back end, Trent McDuffie in the slot. In the outside, he's going to have to step up. And then Nick Bolton's going to have a huge year at linebacker too. But I think that all the pieces are there for them to be a really good defense, probably not as good as last year, but if the offense takes a step forward, the defense takes a little bit of a step back, there's no reason to think that the Chiefs can't still be amazing.
Well, one thing that they have had an ability to do under this general manager, Brett Veach, is they've been able to go out and get steals, and L'Jarius Sneed was not a guy who dominated college football. They saw something in him, and then they put him in a position to succeed, and he grew into being one of the best cover guys there was in the entire NFL. Certainly Trent McDuffie, their first-round draft pick out of Washington, has been a really, really good football player. But so I trust that they will find people to play. Will they be as good as last year at that position? Probably not. But in other areas, they might be better. You don't know. So much of this, Gabe, as you know, we are sitting here in June, where there are no injuries, or if there are injuries, there are injuries you expect guys to come back from surgery or whatever. Who's going to get hurt, and when are they going to get hurt? How much time are they going to miss? That is going to tell a big part of the Chiefs' story. If Mahomes goes down for 4, 5, 6 games, everything looks different. And all we know for sure is people will get hurt. We just don't know when and who they'll be and for how long.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that's just inevitable with a 17-game season, probably eventually an 18-game season, so it'll just get crazier in that regard.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Kansas City Royals. A dramatic game today. They lost in pretty bad fashion, horrible fashion. Games 1, 2, and 3 to the Yankees. Had an afternoon game, the getaway day for the Yankees and the Royals. The Royals, as we speak, are flying to Los Angeles, where they'll take on the Dodgers for a weekend set out at Chavez Ravine. Meanwhile, the Yankees, they're hitting the road, and when they hit the road today, I'm not sure that their Fresca will taste as good on the team plane tonight, because they leave Kansas City having blown a lead. They trailed the whole game. A tremendous performance today by Alec Marsh, the starting pitcher for the Royals. 7 innings, 1 hit, 0 runs. He leaves the game with a 2-0 lead, and promptly John Schreiber gives up the ghost. He doesn't even pitch a full inning, gives up 2 hits, 3 runs, 1 of them earned. He didn't get a lot of help from his defense, but they give up the run. So it looks like the Yankees, they take a 3-2 lead going into the 9th inning, and at the bottom of the 9th, and it looks like they have stolen another game from the Royals to sweep the 4-game set. And somehow, some way, the Royals answer with a massive bottom of the 9th inning with base runners and big hits, and they come away with a 4-3 victory. In Kansas City, I have found we have an NFL mentality, a football mentality, meaning after every win, people are talking about the Royals to the World Series, and after every loss, they're talking about firing everybody out at Kauffman Stadium. The Royals now stand at 25-14 at home. They're 40-30 overall. Gabe, to me, they're playing with house money. I did not expect them to be 10 games over 500 now going into the second week of June.
Yeah, and as Jared continues to say, they're multiple games up on the second wild card position in the AL, which is a really great spot to be in. I mean, they've managed a pretty decent record through the stretch of, I know you had a game rained out last week in Cleveland against the Guardians, so you only had to play 2 there. You get 3 against the Mariners and you win 2 of those, and then today was kind of a huge one just to keep the streak of no sweeps for all season long. That they had to get this one to feel good about themselves going into this weekend. But now you've got to win, and you get Cole Reagan's going to the mound. You get Seth Lugo going to the mound on Friday and Saturday in L.A. So you got to feel good about your chances there. I think that Alec Marsh has just continued to surpass expectations, and he's kind of the embodiment in the bottom of the rotation of what this whole Royals season has kind of been about, which is that you've gotten star performances from Bobby Witt, and that was kind of expected. Salvador Perez is slumping a little bit, but he's had a great season. But tonight, or this afternoon, you had 6, 7, 8, 9 in the lineup in the bottom of the 9th come up, and they get themselves into positions to turn the lineup over. And then Maikel Garcia, he's the leadoff guy. He drives in the 2 for the game winner. I thought it was a great at-bat by Kyle Isbell with 2 outs. He gets down 0-2 and still battles to get a 2-2 single up the middle and keep the Royals alive. And there you go. They get another win, and 40-30 to stay 10 games over 500. That's really impressive, and they just continue to surpass our expectations, even though Tuesday and Wednesday night at the K were probably the worst 2 games of the season for them.
Yeah, it's tough, because the Yankees bring a lot of fans. So there's a lot of people who came in and just to see the game. Royals fans who wanted to see them take on the Yankees, and then the Yankees, they have fans all over the place. There was a family that drove by and talked to me yesterday when I was going live covering the Royals out in the parking lot before the baseball game, and they said they came in from Nebraska. They come in every year. When the Yankees come to town, they drive down because they grew up as Yankee fans, or the grandparents did, and the whole bit. So the whole family's there, and they were excited. And here's the deal: this is a good Yankees team. They have the best record in the American League. They might be the best team in all of baseball. The Phillies and Dodgers could argue with them, but I'll tell you what, they've been impressive. So to come back against them and that bullpen that the Yankees have is impressive. All right, let's switch a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about let's go down to the Big 12 football rankings. And this is where Gabe helps us a lot. Gabe grew up here in Big 12 country. He certainly knows the history of the Big 8 and Big 12. But at the same time, he attended school out at Arizona State, so he's followed the Pac-12 very, very closely. The Daily Oklahoman and Tulsa World are big-time college newspapers. They cover college a lot more than they cover anything else, including even the NBA, and they're an NBA market. And the Tulsa World this week, did we decide it was a Tulsa World? The Tulsa World released...
Well, they were doing an overrated and underrated based off of the ESPN Football Power Index rankings, which you see on your screen.
So the rankings according to ESPN's Power Index, which factors in a lot of things, including the strength of schedule or the weakness of schedule, as you can see, they list the Kansas Jayhawks as number 1 in the new Big 12, which is actually 16 teams. Kansas State is 2, followed by Arizona, University of Arizona. They beat Oklahoma in the bowl game and had a really good season last year. Oklahoma State, which always has players and I think always does better than people expect, they're 4th. But what shocked me is Utah. I know we don't give the Utah a lot of love and respect here in this part of the United States because we don't follow that league as well. They play so many games late at night. Utah has been a dominant team that I don't know how many times they've knocked Oregon out of the playoffs or kept another school like USC from getting to the playoffs because Utah beats them in the Pac-12 championship game. I'm shocked they've got their quarterback Cameron Rising coming back from injury last year. He's coming back. I can't believe that Utah is 5th in this poll. By the way, the last place schools, almost all new schools. Arizona State, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston at the bottom of the league. I'm not sure. What's your reaction to all this? Do you think that we are not giving the Pac-12 enough love?
I mean, this is... The FPI is a little bit flawed in my opinion, and there's always been issues with it. But I do think that the general consensus, at least when I discuss Big 12 power rankings and Big 12 football with my local friends who grew up rooting for KU, K-State, and most of them attended KU and K-State, their consensus is that the Pac-12, notwithstanding last year when you had Washington make the playoff and go to the national championship
Right.
game. USC with Caleb Williams, they were in the hunt. Oregon was great with Bo Nix and such. I think the general consensus is that the Pac-12 had not been as good of a football conference over the last 5 to 6 years, and because of that, everything that Utah did in it, I know that they won the league 2 of the past 3 or 4 seasons, and that included Pac-12 championship game wins over the likes of USC and such. And I don't think that that's gotten a lot of respect, even though if, in my perspective, as somebody who watched a lot of Big 12 football, watched a lot of Pac-12 football, Utah is kind of what K-State is, and they're very, very, and kind of what Oklahoma State is, and just not flashy, but they will beat you up, and you don't want to play a tough opponent the week after you play them, because you're going to be feeling it from the week prior.
And all 3 of those schools you mentioned coached by long-time coaches who have built more than a team. They have built a culture, and so Utah's got a culture. They are tough, like you said. They are tough, and they played the game the right way. Mike Gundy's been at Oklahoma State for a long, long time. Same thing with him. He's lost a lot of players to all 3 of these programs have lost players to transfer, but not as much as others, because they kind of build a culture where people will hang around. K-State, same way. I remember a couple of years ago, people were like, what's going on? Everybody's transferring out. Well, guess what? That was the year they won the Big 12 championship. Players left, but they left because they weren't playing, and the reason they weren't playing was they were buried behind really good football players. What do you think about KU? In my mind, all of this is predicated on keeping Jalen Daniels healthy and at quarterback, and we've not seen him be able to do that really for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, it'll be very much reliant upon his health in terms of how much KU contends in the league. I know that they've got one of the best backfields in the entire country with Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, and with everything that they've got going on there. There's so much talent on that KU offense, but I do have a little bit of a hard time envisioning playing your home games at Children's Mercy Park and Arrowhead Stadium as being an advantage to KU. I think based on again my time in the Pac-12, seeing what UCLA and the challenges that they had in terms of getting students 45 minutes away to the Rose Bowl from where their campus is. Getting students from Lawrence all the way to Arrowhead for those home games, I think, is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I just don't know if KU's primed to have a 10-11 win season that they would need to win the Big 12 if they're not getting the advantage of, like, you can say whatever you want about David Booth Memorial Stadium and whether it's a home field advantage or not generally, but I still think, aside from, like, strip away all of the fun of playing at Arrowhead and how cool it is for these college kids to get to play where the back-to-back Super Bowl champions play, I don't think that that's a super advantage for KU. And because of that, and because of the fact that K-State is probably going to be at least favored by gambling sites in every single game that they play this season, as far as what we've seen so far this preseason, I would give the edge to K-State. But both teams have uncertainty at quarterback because you don't know what Jalen Daniels is going to be health-wise, and we've only seen one bowl game start from Avery Johnson, albeit a really good one.
And one thing you left out is a massive piece of the puzzle over there in Lawrence, and that is that Lance Leipold has lost his offensive coordinator, who's been with him pretty much his entire run in college.
Yeah.
One of the top coordinators in all of America, had turned down job after job after job. Finally, Penn State threw so much money at him, and perhaps he thought this was the right time to move.